topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart.
Hello, and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia Yaksan, and I'm a diversity educator. I teach courses, coach and train folks who want to learn to identify patterns of bias that cause harm to themselves or others, and cultivate new pathways and habits and actions that are far more inclusive and create more belonging, which actually makes everyone much happier in the end. It's totally worth it. If you want to see some of the courses I teach, you can look at my website, which is knowwhatyouvantcoaching.wordpress.com. We have an amazing show tonight. It's packed with stories about a beautiful vineyard called the Great Bear Winery. I'll introduce our guest in just a minute, but I want to first just use my own voice to share. I'm deeply concerned about what's happening in our country. And for people who are listening, you can think about if you're deeply concerned. I'm a Californian, so I just want to share that it doesn't feel good or right that we have the White House administration ordering federalizing National Guard to come to LA when we have peaceful protesters protesting against the violence of immigration raids. Actually, the ICE immigration raids are quite violent, upsetting to families who were not only work and contributing to our economy, but some were born here, some children were born here. It's disheartening. It's neighbors to see families torn apart that aren't the criminals that the president promised would be arrested. It's hardworking people who are contributing positively. And the disrespect not only for our governor and our mayor, the mayor of LA, but also for the military. I really appreciate the LAPD, who are super competent. I appreciate the National Guard. I appreciate the Marines very much and respect them. And I feel bad that they're put into these roles that might not be comfortable for all of them. And I just had to say that and thank the peaceful protesters. The majority are peaceful. A few bad apples not helping anything or anyone. Thank you for giving me that minute. And now on to something that feels much better. Our guest, Marcus Meadows-Smith. I'm going to read your bio, but please come on. I'm going to start reading some of the background you have. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for
being here. Great pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited. I've been wanting to have you and your wife, and I know you'll represent both of you. And let me just read a couple sentences of your bio so folks get a beginning understanding of your amazing background. So Marcus Meadows-Smith, owner of Great Bear Vineyards and CEO of a local agricultural startup, operates the Great Bear Winery with his wife, Jenny. It's family-run business. It's sustainable. It's award-winning. They make world-class wines, and I'm not a connoisseur of any kind, but if I'm going to have wine, that's where I'm going. It's so worth it, and the atmosphere is so beautiful. And they do this in harmony with nature. They grow premium grapes organically, giving guests, and this is true, a 5-star experience with award-winning wines, but in a rustic and casual setting. The ambience, I love this. The ambience is more like a friendly English pub than an upmarket wine bar. That is so true. Let me just read a little bit more that I want Marcus to comment on. You grew up in England. Your wife, Jenny, the winemaker, studied viticulture and enology, which was a new word to me at UC Davis, and that you worked in South Africa and did research in genetics and improving local food crops, the food crop cassava. So let's hear some of your voice because you can tell us all about it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that warm introduction. Yes, I really should start by giving all the credit to my wife. We actually have 4 children, and when they all left home, we dated for a little while, which you don't do when you have 4 kids. And we realized we had a shared passion for farming, for good wine, for good food, enjoy people's company. And I just wanted to jump in, plant a vineyard. Luckily, my wife's the smart one. As you mentioned, she actually went and studied viticulture and enology at UC Davis. So she layered that on top of her degree in chemistry and her MBA. So she's got the science background, but she's got the passion and she's got the artistry and then the science that was taught by the UC Davis professors, and she sort of evolved on what she learned to make some really fabulous wines here in Davis. And as you mentioned, the other big passion for us is the environment. So we do grow in harmony with nature. So that's a very key part of who we are. So it's about world-class wines. It's about growing in harmony with nature, and we are organically certified. And then it's about creating that welcoming atmosphere for people to come and enjoy a glass of wine with friends. So that's what we're all about.
I was there recently and saw the lavender fields, and it's just mesmerizing, even from a distance.
Oh yeah, so this time of year, the lavender, it puts on a spectacular show. Early in the spring, though, we have an abundance of wildflowers. If you sit or stand quietly in the vineyard, you will always see a few jackrabbits and cottontail rabbits hopping around. If you're here at dusk, because we do open till late on Thursdays and Fridays, you'll see our owls flying about. So we have 3 breeding pairs of barn owls and a great horned owl that nest here each year. So there's always something for the nature lover as well as the wine connoisseur at our winery.
That's so true. And you're just on the edge of Davis, not on 20 acres. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Not far at all from town. And it's just amazing, the feeling of being out in nature in the country. Just the whole vibe is relaxing once you get there.
Yes, we're just 2 miles from downtown, from the farmers market. So what a lot of people do, go to the farmers market, build yourself a picnic, some great artisan breads and cheeses and fruits and vegetables, and then they come up and picnic at our place. It's just 2 miles, but people feels like a world away. The design of the winery is California Mission, so effectively Spanish-style buildings, but the wine tasting actually happens on a picnic lawn in a barn that dates back to 1860. It's there along with the original homestead from 1860. So we actually bought from the family of the original European settlers. So they'd been here for around 160 years. So we got some of the oral history, which was sort of so nice to learn how they came across on the wagon trains. They bought a little homestead from a catalogue, and then they built it themselves along with a great barn. And the nice connection to the family is that 2 of the grandchildren of the lady we bought from are actually wine club members. One lives in Oregon, the other one lives in Southern California. But that sort of history and connection, that feeling of family and continuity is, what we're about.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I'm thinking for people there are some people who are just hearing this on the radio, so they can't see your website. So somebody might want to be looking this up while we're talking. So you can go to greatbearvineyards.com, and it's a beautiful website. And I'm thinking, what do you think, Marcus? Should we show some of the photos and talk more about, just let people see? And then I want to make sure we save time for like your very important climate saving work. It's huge. Sometimes our whole shows are dedicated to climate resilience and climate change projects.
That sounds like a good plan to me. So yes, bring up the pictures there. What you're alluding to is, yes, I actually walk the talk. I run a science-based agricultural startup. So Monday to Thursday, I'm saving the planet through with a group of really great scientists in Davis. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I work for my wife and with the rest of the family, producing great wine. So all in all, we're looking to save the planet, enjoy the planet. So yeah, I've got some pretty serious messages to pass across. But yeah, for people who are just listening rather than seeing, it's a bit tough for me to explain this picture because this is a collage of everything that goes on there. My wife is in a couple of the pictures. She's actually from Southern Africa, so her mother's Swazi, father part Zulu, and moved to England when she was in her teens, and then we moved out as a family a number of years ago to the US. And originally, I have to admit, because you're going to talk about the environment, so I will come clean, that I used to run a multi-billion-dollar specialty chemical company. And I was running Europe for an American company. What brought me over to the US originally was I was promoted to run the global business for crop protection for synthetic pesticides. But one day it was our daughter, who was 13 at the time, she was changing light bulbs for energy efficient ones. And I made a perfectly sound economic dad type comment, like, why are you throwing away a perfectly good light bulb? And she turned around to me and said, Dad, and what are you doing for the environment? And it was such a simple question. I don't know if it hit me on the right day or the wrong day, depending on the perception. But that's what brought us out to California, for me to run an ag tech startup, and then as a family to develop this organic and sustainable vineyard and winery. So as I mentioned, here's a picture of the winery, Spanish style, California mission style. There are some elements of it that are actually direct copies of some of the mission buildings. So I think there's a doorway that's a replica of the mission at Carmel. So it's a beautiful place. I grew up in England. So for me, California is, it's blue skies and palm trees. And so there are a number of palm trees. They're not indigenous and native to California, but they just fit in so well. They make me happy. And I'm pleased to say that the wildlife has taken to it. So our barn owls nest in the palm trees on the edge of the property. Oh, here's a map of the world. So, oh gosh, how do we do this one on the radio? So just pointing out that it is around 8,000 miles from Cape Town to London. So when I was much younger, so my first job after university, I actually graduated from university in England, but I went to South Africa, as you mentioned, to work in research to try to develop a more drought-tolerant cassava crop. So that's one of the staple foods of the local population. But then when it came time to leave, I didn't have enough money for the airfare. I actually had to leave quite quickly because it was during the apartheid era, and I was branded, I think I was branded a terrorist, or the organization I was in was viewed that way. So I actually walked and hitchhiked the length of Africa. So right from the tip of South Africa all the way back to London. It was quite amazing because
Wow.
I'm passionate for the environment. I saw gorillas in the Congo, when I was alone on foot. I saw lions and rhinoceroses again while I was alone on foot in Zimbabwe and Zambia. So it was really special for me to get that close to nature. But the other thing that was so impressive was the hospitality that I was shown. So about a third of the time I slept rough under the stars, but about a third of the time I was put up by local people who, were living, you're talking about subsistence farmers living in a small village or living in the rainforests of the Congo, who really didn't actually deal with money. And yet they opened their huts to me, they shared a meal with me. So, I fell in love with Africa, with the continent, with the people. And so, it was a special journey. It did mean that when I got back to England, I'd seen enough poverty that I decided not to be a poor student and do a PhD. It was my original planning, but actually went into pesticide sales, started as a trainee, and as I mentioned, ended up running the company, which is what brought us out to the US.
How long did that journey take?
Well, people say, how do you walk across Africa? And it's very simple. Is you get up in the morning, you walk 30 miles, and then after about 6 months or so, you've covered, 8,000 miles. There were little bits. The Sahara Desert, I had to hitchhike. It's way too far between the oasis towns to walk. So I was very grateful for business people and truck drivers who were happy to give me a lift. And then when I hit Europe, it was just about 2 weeks before Christmas. I really wanted to see my family, so I hitchhiked Europe. It's probably not a thing that's done today, but there again, probably walking across Africa wasn't a thing that was done back then. So it was a special time, and it really was. It was the beauty of the people who helped me along the way, and the beauty of the wildlife. Spectacular continent.
Wow, sounds incomparable. It's just phenomenal. And so did you meet Ginny in London, in England?
I did. So yes, but there was the connection there from Africa, because as I said, she grew up in South Africa, in Durban, and in Swaziland before moving to England.
Wow, that's an amazing journey. So can you tell us more about the Monday through Thursday work and
yes,
what that means?
So I'll maybe take the story back a few years before that. So as I mentioned, I used to run a very large specialty chemical business, the pesticides division, so pesticides, crop protection, plastics, additives, and consumer products divisions. I was going back to Europe, to Switzerland, to run another specialty chemical business. And then, as I said, my 13-year-old daughter asked me that vital question, what do I do for the environment, Dad?
I love that.
Made me feel about, half an inch tall. The only way, it has to be a 13-year-old daughter who can really get under her dad's skin that way. And so I came out to California to run a biopesticide startup. So it was a company that was already established, but it was sort of in financial distress. And it was focused just on organic food production. What we did was actually change the strategy of that company, not just to deliver the benefits of the products for organic agriculture, but also demonstrate to conventional growers and the conventional pesticide industry how biological products could actually help grow food and while reducing the chemical load and the unintended adverse impact of some chemicals on the environment, and do things like reduce the pesticide residues of conventional crops, fruit and vegetables when they got to the market. So we were very successful at turning that company around, and actually were acquired by Bayer, the big German pharmaceutical chemical company, after 4 years. And now, they're a leader in actually offering combined solutions of both chemicals and biologicals together, which is, much better for the environment. It reduces that chemical load, reduces the pesticide residues. We were very successful. My share of the proceeds was really quite nice, which is why we could plant a vineyard and build a winery. And as I said, my wife is the brains behind the winemaking. I drive the tractor. My biggest skill is being able to drive the tractor in a straight line. I have to admit that that's my contribution. But the rows of our vines are 6 foot apart, and the tractor's 5 foot wide. So there's a little bit of skill there. So yeah, we planted the vineyard. Driving the tractor, though, gave me more things to think about. And I worked for some venture capital companies, came across, one of my projects was actually to look at a company in New Zealand to analyze, was it a good investment for the venture capitalist or not? I said it was amazing. It was a very different approach to microbial discovery. And they said, did you want to run the company? And I said, jokingly, only if I could cycle to work. And this company was based in Auckland, New Zealand. I lived in Davis, California. I wasn't moving. But they took me at my word, and they relocated the company to Davis, California. We now have a brilliant team of scientists, around 50 scientists, many of them with PhDs. And what we've been able to do now is gone beyond biopesticides. So we do have some of those biopesticides I talked about earlier. But I think the more important work we're doing at the moment is we're discovering nitrogen-fixing microbes that colonize corn and wheat and potatoes, rice, tomatoes, so many non-leguminous crops. So as listeners probably know, if they remember back to their school biology lessons, that peas and beans and the legume family have bacteria that live in their root systems and convert atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia for plant growth. And so it means you don't need to add fertilizers to peas and beans. They produce it naturally themselves. What we've done is we've discovered robust spore-forming microbes that do the same things for non-leguminous crops, so the major row crops. So this is going to reduce the grower's reliance on applying synthetic nitrogen fertilizers. And the problem with nitrogen fertilizers, they're great. It's the only way we can feed the world, but it has some unintended consequences. So the production of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer is very energy intensive. It is one of the biggest single contributors of greenhouse gases, contributing, they estimate, somewhere between 2 and 4% of annual production of greenhouse gases. The other unintended consequences is that it can run off into streams and rivers, and we have around 500 dead zones around the world. And so, that's another unintended consequence. The other one, it leaches into groundwater, gets into drinking water. We live off well water because we're outside of the town. We usually get a letter around April time that says we can no longer drink our water because it has too many nitrates in to be safe for human consumption. So finding alternatives such as the microbial solutions we've discovered is going to be a benefit to the grower for his profitability. It's also going to be a benefit to the environment. They're low-cost options, so there's going to be a knock-on benefit to the consumer as well. We've just moved out of the discovery phase. What's very nice, as I mentioned, the company was originally founded in New Zealand, and we actually last year launched our first nitrogen-fixing product in New Zealand. So we have some wild-type nitrogen-fixing microbes that are being used on multiple crops there, so wheat and barley, broccoli, and several others. So it was very nice that it came that full circle.
That's so impressive and so encouraging. It's so encouraging to hear the whole systemic, holistic approach and benefits. Look at this.
We just flashed through a few of those photos, and it did mention to me, science is my other big passion. So I talked about the environment, I talked about food and wine, but science is another big one. And I would have to say, at our company, we've brought in experts from all around the world. You gave an introduction that suggested the current administration may not be making all the best decisions. And when we see some of the language around Harvard, I think we the science community have to stick together and say, no, we want to be the best in the world. We need the best people from around the world to contribute to the science community. That's how we're making our breakthroughs today by a very diverse team of people. So let's hope that that filters through to the rest of society.
I very much appreciate that point.
So here now another shout out for my wife. So for people listening on the radio, sorry about this, but what's just come onto the screen is a whole lineup of my wife's wines. She's a truly great winemaker, from white wines, rosés, and red wines. Last year, her rosé got 96 points, as evidenced in this photo. This year at the California State Fair, her rosé got 99 points, but the red wines are absolutely exceptional, as well as are the whites. Almost all of her wines score 90 points and above. That's 90 out of 100 for people who aren't in the wine making world. Got gold and double gold medals, across the board. So as I mentioned, that is the science, the artistry, and also the support of UC Davis professors and staff have also helped contribute to our success. So I think in the winemaking world, you're not an island. You are. When people talk about terroir, for sure, it's the great soils that we have, it's the great climate, but it's also the people around you who actually create that winemaking skill.
That has to be true. And out of all the varieties of wines that she's created, how many different types of grapes, like how many of them are blended, a combination?
Well, at the vineyard, so even though, as I mentioned, the whole plot is 20 acres, because we grow lavender, mixed fruit trees and olive trees, but we have about just under 10 acres of vines, and we grow 4 whites, so Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Roussanne, Albarino, and we make a white blend as well. And then the reds are Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Tempranillo, Petit Syrah, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, Primitivo, and Tannat. And also we've just last year added a new varietal from UC Davis that is been developed to be more resistant to some diseases and also more resistant to the climate change we're expecting in this northern part of California, with, you know, more volatility in our weather, but also hotter summers. We're not, as wine growers, we're not fearful of hot weather. What we really need is hot days, cool nights. So long as the oceans don't change the delta breeze that comes off the ocean every night, because, you know, in the summertime we can be 90, 100, but each night through the summer we drop to 55, 60 degrees Fahrenheit in Davis. That is just absolutely perfect weather for growing high quality wine grapes. And then we do other things to contribute to that sort of sustainability and the quality issue. As I said, we grow organically, but we do other things like deficit irrigation. So we make the vines struggle for water, partly because we want to conserve water, because we are, you know, semi-desert in the valley in California, so we shouldn't waste water. But the other reason is when you make the grapes struggle for water, you have smaller berries, which means you get more intense flavors, more intense colors into the wine. So that's part of our success as a winery, is to grow really high quality grapes and therefore can make really high quality wines. And there's a picture of my wife in the vineyard. That's usually me. Actually, I shouldn't brag. She probably spends as much time as I do in the vineyard, but then her main kingdom is the winery, where she does, you know, the skillful stuff. And what I would say is we're actually, her winemaking style is minimal intervention. So part of her skill is actually to walk the vineyard almost every day at harvest time and decide row by row which grapes are going to be picked. So if you pick the grapes on the right days, all you really need to do is add yeast, and you bring out that beautiful flavor profile. So she doesn't add, you know, the additives that are sort of maybe common in some of the bulk wineries, you know, where they add enzymes, they add chemicals to improve the color or improve the flavor. My wife's just adding yeast, and for the red wines, a second microbe that changes malic acid into lactic acid. And then the other only flavor that's added, as you can see in that picture there, is the flavor of oak from natural traditional oak barrels. And there we use both French oak and American oak, depending on the flavor profile we're trying to get out. So, yeah.
Well, no wonder it tastes so clean. It tastes so clean and pure. Yeah, that makes sense. Wow, that's wonderful to like imagine how much attention she is paying to exactly when to just pick these grapes in this row, and just following up, just having an eye for that.
Yes, it's an eye and it's a taste. So as I mentioned, the flavor is in the skin. So she'll test. The basic test is what's the sugar content of the juice. And once you've reached a certain level, then what you're doing is you're tasting the skins. And for the red wines, it's also very important to taste the seed or the pip inside to make sure it has a nice nutty flavor, because in the red wine, the seeds are there for the whole 2 weeks of fermentation, so they do impart a flavor. If the seed's green, it will leave a sort of bitter astringency in the wine. So making sure it's fully ripe but not overripe is part of that skill.
What a balance to find. In such a short time, because, I mean, how long have the vineyards been there? It just seems like...
So we planted when they were 1 year old in 2014. So they're now 11, 12 years old. As I said, I think we must give credit to UC Davis and the professors. Mike Anderson, one of the professors who ran the Oakville Research Facility in Napa Valley for UC Davis for a couple of decades, helped design our vineyard. So when my wife was studying viticulture and enology on the course, she was the only one of the students who'd actually bought a piece of land to plant a vineyard. And so they used it as a case study. So Mike Anderson designed the vineyard with, input from the students and input from us. So we grow the best quality grapes given the climate and the soils that we have in Davis. And then when it came to the winemaking, the professors came out and held her hand through the process. So she got decades worth of experience put in there. And still today, Andy Waterhouse, former professor and head of viticulture and enology in the Mondavi Center, comes out and helps her sort of tweak the wines and taste them, because there's a skill also in blending. So from one barrel to the other, they may be different, or maybe you want to put 2% Petit Verdot or Petit Syrah or Tannat into the Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's a bit like adding salt and pepper. It just sort of makes the flavor pop. You're not trying to change the flavor of Cabernet Sauvignon, but you're trying to just enhance it, change its mouthfeel. So there's a lot of skill that goes on beyond that. And so, yeah, that's being part of that community has been very important. And then my wife has a number of friends who are also winemakers. Rebecca Weinberg and Shana Harding, two both famous Napa Valley winemakers. And then more locally, Luciana Turkovic and Nicole Solano also helped her. So I don't know, it's like a little sisterhood of expertise within the wine industry, who sort of got together and help one another get better. So that's why the wines are so good. I mean, it's usually you go to a winery and you think, oh, they make great white wine, but not so sure about the reds. But my wife's wines, the white, the rosé, and the reds are all exceptional, all scoring that 90 to 99 points. She even makes a port style wine, which is also another award winner. And then more recently has also developed a line of natural wines. And there it's actually, you need to be even more skilled to get the wines to take credit to the end of the process. So maybe for listeners who don't know, a natural wine is a wine where you don't add commercial yeasts. You're just reliant on the natural yeasts that are present in the vineyard. So the flavor profile can go in any direction. But again, it's picking the grapes on the right day, letting them slowly do the fermentation with those wild yeasts, and sort of looking after them through the process. Within that range, she also has an orange wine. The idea introduced to us by our daughters who live in Brooklyn. In fact, they were probably what drove my wife to make natural wines in the first place, because they take us to these natural wine bars in Brooklyn because they're trendy. And that's the nicest thing I could say. No, I shouldn't disparage anyone else in the industry. But the descriptors when you go to a natural wine bar in Brooklyn are funky and earthy, and they have these descriptors, whereas my wife's normal wines are sort of elegant, fruit forward. They exude a desire to be drunk with white tablecloths and, inelegant surroundings, or taken to a barbecue, but, one where you actually want to drink the wine rather than the beer. Whereas a lot of natural wines are a lot more, earthy and funky. And so my wife wanted to see if it was actually possible to produce a high quality natural wine that everyone would want to drink. And she's been able to achieve that. But that goes under the Black Bicycle Farm label. It's not as Great Bear Vineyard. So we actually now have two wine brands out there.
And what's the other one? Do you want to say the other brand?
Black Bicycle Farm. You still buy it at our winery, but it's a bit more of a cult. You have to ask for it, but we do sell it above counter on the second weekend of each month. Okay. So, for example, this weekend we actually have a vegan cookery course. This week, next week? No, this week. Where people are cooking vegan food, and then we've paired the food with three of the natural wines. So we do a lot of things beyond winemaking. As I mentioned, we love to be a community winery, so we do fundraisers for CASA, for YOLO Food Bank, for some of the local schools, and so it's more than just a winery. It's also, we hope it's a community meeting point, and it's a place that actually supports the local community. So as I mentioned, we have about 600 mixed fruit trees, and the production of that orchard is picked by volunteers from YOLO Food Bank. So we tell them when they're ripe, they come along and pick them, and then they do a wonderful job distributing to the needy and to the elderly of YOLO County. So a shout out to the volunteers at YOLO Food Bank for the great job they do as well.
And then a shout out to you all. Really, it's a beautiful thing to help feed people. Very very appreciated. We need compassion and the fundraising, and it really is a community atmosphere. And I want to just mention to, again, people who are listening only, you can go to our archives, because every show is archived. You can go to YouTube Talk for Media, because the photos are beautiful. There's pictures of sunset and events, like so many different weddings there, and different types of weddings, and graduations and birthday parties that you can see through the photographs, and the beautiful long table of members of the wine club. And it isn't does have this good, it doesn't have an elitist feeling, and there's nothing wrong with, there's elegance and high quality in wine bars, but this has the products, the high level, absolutely award-winning products, but you don't feel like you have to dress up. You can, it's fun, but you could be casual, just connect with friends. There's often music, events. And again, I really appreciate the community mindset. We sure is a good thing to help the world. And before I forget, there was a question from someone named Heather. I want to make sure we do in our last, we have about 5 minutes left, but she asked back to the map, the photo of the map. Thanks for your question, Heather. It asked about the red arrow across the states, and we see the red.
Oh yes. So when we first landed, the world headquarters of Uniroyal Chemical, Chemtura, who it evolved into, was based in Connecticut. So we used to live in Middlebury, Connecticut, and then we moved out to California. I didn't walk that distance. No, I did a 2-month road trip with my kids. So 4 kids and my wife, all in a little minivan with a tent on the roof, and we went round the national parks and the state parks and the forestry lands camping for 2 months. And the US is also another spectacular country. Yeah, we had an amazing time. We went to the rodeo in Cody, we went to the Grand Ole Opry, we went to Graceland. We just saw everything. This is when we thought we were going back to Switzerland. Had we known we were going to end up in California for another decade or so, we wouldn't have needed to cram it all into 2 months. But that was an amazing trip as well. Highly recommended.
That is wonderful. How great to show that. And I love that you listen to your children. I know they're adults now, but how wonderful they have
They are. They've all got their own lives, but as I mentioned, it was a family business. So our oldest daughter works for Google, but she does our IT and our back office IT systems. Our second daughter works in PR for Audi, and she does our Instagram and Facebook posts. Daughter number 3 is an artist in LA, and she does a lot of our artwork. And our son, he drives the quad bike during harvest time. So, everyone contributes. Jenny's mum is here at the moment. She helps at harvest still, even though she's 91, comes over and helps. And when she gets too tired to help in the vineyard, she comes and makes tea and breakfast for us, because as I said, we're still a little bit English, so we do rely on, about, half a dozen cups of tea a day to keep us going.
That's wonderful. Well, we have just enough time for your closing thought, and then I will get to thank everyone. Do you have any kind of final thoughts?
Well, it's a wonderful country. It's a wonderful place where we live. The Davis communities there. It's a spectacular place to make really high quality wines, and my wife does it with both science and passion and artistry, and we do it while we are growing in harmony with nature, the beauty, and keeping the beauty and having that biodiversity while protecting the environment. And actually, I believe we're making the environment better with things like our permanent cover crops and our deficit irrigation, and being home to, coyotes, foxes, owls, rabbits, gophers, squirrels. It's a real joy to have this land that we do and the winery, and then sharing it with the local community, as well as some pretty high-powered wine connoisseurs come and seek us out in Davis. So we're enjoying life.
Wonderful. And yes, thank you for creating a space where others can come and enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's we want to give a 5-star experience to everyone who comes out and share the space, share the beauty of the space over a glass of great wine, good conversation.
Well, thank you, Marcus Meadows-Smith and Jenny. I really appreciate your sharing all this information, and it's so pro-earth and pro-human. I wanted to have you on the show for more people to learn about it. And I want to thank our engineer Rebel and our producer Dean Piper and all the listeners and viewers. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time at Talk4TV or W4CY.com. And may we all have enriching conversations in diversity every day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech